It is said that power abhors a vacuum. In the case of the fast-paced action of clan warfare, this principle was demonstrated at the 65-ton price point. While mechs like the Mad Dog, Hellbringer, and Timberwolf did set a high standard for Omni-Mech performance, it was quickly made clear during Operation Revival that there was something missing from the Pantheon. Though the Hellbringer did bring its unique brand of violence in the form of adding weapons and worrying about survival later, not everyone was as gung-ho toward the Omni-Mech as the Jade Falcons. Yet humans couldn't just rely on Mad Dogs and Timberwolves. The issue was resolved twice over with a quick succession of two new 65-ton Omni-Mech designs. The first was the Ebon Jaguar, which would end up terrorizing the Draconis Combine among the forces of the Smoke Jaguar, and the other was a more modest entry produced by Clan Wolf, designated the Linebacker. Today we're going to dig into the nuts and bolts of the Linebacker and identify just how it contributed to the fight. Stick around and we'll see if we can't move this ball downfield. A result of the clan's desire to constantly push the technology envelope, the Linebacker represents an attempt to make a faster version of the Mad Cat. BattleTech collectible card game, Linebacker A. Looking through battlefield reports and testimonies, Clan Wolf leadership identified a need for a heavy Omni-Mech that could keep pace with the rapidly shifting battle space, while still being tough enough to endure more than one or two hard hits. Here you thought the video was going to be mostly bashing Clan Wolf and the Linebacker, but it's actually going to be 30 minutes of trash-talking the Hellbringer. Sorry not sorry. Where the Linebacker broke from the mold was with the use of the more powerful 390 Extra Light Fusion engine, which allowed the Omni-Mech to reach a top speed of 97 km per hour. Wrapped in endosteel and 10 tons of composite A4 ferrofibrous armor, the Linebacker was both faster and tougher than its peers in the 65-ton space. Let's break it down here and look at the options. We'll even include the Ebon Jaguar because it's awesome and I play favorites. Besides the larger engine and 2 additional tons of armor over the Hellbringer, it's notable that the use of endosteel in both the Linebacker and Ebon Jaguar makes a big difference in the flexibility of the Omnipod configurations. The Ebon Jaguar, or Cauldron-born if you prefer, had the edge in overall pod tonnage, but the open critical locations were significantly limited in comparison to the Hellbringer. Though the Linebacker also faced this issue, it was a lot less important when you only had 17.5 tons of weapons and equipment to add to the mech. The takeaway from the chart, besides that opportunity cost spares no one, is that the Linebacker filled an important niche, that being the 65-ton Omni-Mech that could keep up with the pack and survive long enough to deliver hurt upon the enemy. The cost of that was a more Spartan weapons loadout. Of course, what you do with that 17.5 tons can make a big difference. The prime configuration of the Linebacker was a generalist all-purpose build that was dominated by a pair of extended-range particle projection cannons split between the arms. The LRM-5 launcher was an inexpensive yet flexible addition to the left torso which fed from 1 ton of ammunition. A Streak short-range missile forerack on the right torso provided additional short-range punch, and in one of those few examples in Clan standard configs, an ER small laser was installed into the right torso facing that rear firing arc. While the loadout for the Linebacker Prime does pale in comparison to the Hellbringer and Timberwolf, one shouldn't discount the awesome drawing power of paired ERBPCs. The Prime can fire them relatively consistently while on the move, taking a turn off to fire the LRM-5 instead every once in a while. We're going to see a general trend with the official Linebacker configurations toward longer range builds that allow the mech to stay on the move and play the role of a skirmisher that can pick when it wants to commit to a fight thanks to its ability to move faster than most of its foes. We were about 2 clicks from the Fred T. Barry Naval Base when Bailey reported a contact at the front of our formation. A few seconds thereafter, I saw a Shrike about 150 meters away. As it jumped, I fired both of my linebacker's heavy large lasers and struck true. The loss of so much armor while in the air unbalanced it, and it crashed into the street nearby. I fired again while it peppered me with autocannon and laser fire. Spiking heat crippled my ground movement, so I engaged my jump jets and landed a block away. I backed into an open warehouse, and the Shrike landed about 30 seconds later. Testimony from Mechwarrior Chiana Wolf, 19th September 3146. A Hero Falls, Shattered Fortress. The linebacker's design was greenlit and would eventually be produced both within clan homeworlds on Strenamekti as well as in the Inner Sphere on an Ark Royal factory line. It wasn't long before the mech was spotted among the Wolf Tumen. Its first breakout opportunity to shine was during the trial on Tukayyid, where all 5 of the original configurations were spotted among the wolves. The A config was once again primarily focused on long-range weaponry. This included 2 ER large lasers split between the arms as the main damage dealers. They were backed up by a left torso-mounted long-range missile 15 rack and an LRM-5 in the right torso. The LRM-15 fed from 2 tons of ammunition, which is 16 shots for those of you in the peanut gallery. For mid and close-range contacts, twin ER medium lasers in the right torso offered their consistent 7 damage apiece. While running and gunning, the linebacker A could consistently fire the 2 ER large lasers without going into the red, and could even toss in the LRM-15 every other shot without issue. If it came down to a choice between going with the Prime or the A for a long-range skirmisher, the Prime may get the press with those ER PPC hits, but the ER large lasers are a consistent quality producer which can win the fight. If you're still skeptical of the intended mission profile, the B configuration could be our trump card. The star of the show this time was the right torso-mounted Gauss rifle that fed from 2 tons of ammunition. It was backed up in the mid-range with 3 ER medium lasers split, 2 in the left arm and 1 in the right. Finally, the emotional support ER small laser makes its appearance in the left torso, though this time it's facing forward. While the Gauss rifle always leaves an impression, the B config was the lesser of the 3 original long-range options. This was partially due to the ammunition limitation of the Gauss rifle, but also the overall DPS drop at range. Unless the warrior using the mech had a particular distaste for energy weaponry, there's not much of an argument in the B's favor. The Gauss rifle just takes up too much of an already limited mass available. Things start to get a little bit more interesting with the C configuration, which still leaned into the long-range focus, but with a bit more nuance and flair. The 2 long-range weapons the Mechwarrior relied upon were an ER large laser set into the left arm and an Ultra AC-5 autocannon installed into the right arm, which fed from a single ton of ammunition. The mixed long-range weapons were aided, starting at 15 hexes, by 4 ER medium lasers, one of which was placed in the rear-firing arc. 2 machine guns in the right torso offered their modest fire, though one of them also faced that rear-firing arc. Finally, a flamer was set into the right torso, again facing that rear-firing arc. Now, if you're thinking that's a lot of stuff facing the rear, well, we're on the same page. Whoever came up with this one must have been traumatized by an elemental at some point and vowed to never let it happen again. The combination of ER large laser and UAC-5 wasn't terrible, though their range profiles don't match up well with a 4 hex difference in max range. Heat generation only became a problem when bringing in the ER medium lasers, though it would be easy to lay off with the ER large laser when things got cozy in the short range. It's an interesting build, but unless you expect infantry or battle armor, the other configurations probably make better sense. The last of the original configurations for the linebacker was the D, and it was the odd man out mid and short range brawling option. The longest range weapons were a pair of ER medium lasers split between the side torsos, but they were the B stage act in comparison to the 4 streak short range missile 6 racks split between the arms. They fed from 3 tons of ammunition, and the potential 48 damage and SRM hits promised much in the way of wailing and lamentation should the launchers all achieve lock at the right moment. For as little as the linebacker had to work with, the D configuration is dangerous. Every turn an enemy spends in range of those streak launchers is borrowed time, and the linebacker's Mechwarrior knows it. When Paul declared a trial of refusal at the end of the Blood Rite, the Falcons screeched bloody noise about unavoidable delays and foreign contaminants, a large load of deep space fertilizer. They gave the Star Captain his trial, and to this day it remains Con Andrews' belief that the Falcons gave Paul a defective linebacker. No evidence can be found, of course, because the Omni-Mech went up like a Roman candle when his ammunition cooked off. Despite our advice, Con Andrews refused to bring the matter to the Grand Council, stating that it would only get the Falcons a censure for their poor handling of the event. And look what happened to the Coyotes in 3062 after the Babylon incident. Censure indeed. Preening the Scales, the Wars of Reaving. Though the linebacker first entered service just as the clan invasion ground to a halt at Tukayyid, the plans to eventually phase out the Timberwolf in Clan Wolf Tumans and replace it with the linebacker continued. Other clans, including the Coyotes and Snow Ravens, showed interest in the design, and even the Jade Falcons and Hell's Horses eventually ended up with some linebackers in their Tumans through trade or salvage. During one encounter on Albiero, the commander of a striker trinary within the 1st Wolf Strike Grenadiers named Star Captain Killian Sender introduced some Smoke Jaguars to the linebacker. The 11th Jaguar regulars were expecting an attack by lighter elements of the Wolf advance and were caught off guard when the striker trinary began hammering their flank with stars that included the linebackers. The machine's larger engine threw a wrench into the plan, and the Jaguars suffered the consequences. During the Refusal War, the Jade Falcons faced the brunt of the linebackers' wrath. Though the Falcons did end up winning the epic fight between the two powerful clans in 3057, we all know that Clan Wolf never really loses, and as a result, the linebacker persisted. In the distance, he saw the woods also come alive as the remaining members of his command emerged from hiding in their powered-down mechs. Gregory's imposing grizzly let loose a withering barrage with its Gauss rifle, a pulse laser, and a handful of long-range missiles, stabbing a Wolf linebacker in the rear where its armor was already dangerously thin. Most of the missiles did not hit, but the other weapons did find their target. The linebacker seemed to quake in place, shuddering as its internal ammunition cooked off under the assault. It turned to face Gregory, slowly, showing Sang the horrible rips in its now all but evaporated rear armor. Sick green coolant leaked like blood from the wound, sizzling on the blasted hot armor remains. Roar of Honor by Blanley Pardoe. The next official configuration for the linebacker arrived in 3061, and it was designated the E. It featured an ER large laser in the right torso, backed up by a pair of advanced tactical missile 6 launchers split between the arms. Each missile launcher could feed from its own dedicated 3 tons of ammunition, which of course is ideal when we're talking ATMs. Finally, a light active probe was installed into the center torso, aiding the linebacker in its hunt. While the long-range damage of the ATMs was modest, the potential 36 damage in 3-point chunks with the high explosive munitions isn't something to be ignored. The E configuration ran cool, had a good amount of ammunition, and if it was played right, it could be a menace on the battlefield the entire fight. As a general-purpose ATM platform, it's entirely respectable. One of the more famous linebacker mech warriors was one Connor Rude, who earned a distinction first as Saw Khan and then Khan of Clan Ice Hellion, and then later Saw Khan and then Khan of Clan Goliath Scorpion. After the ill-fated attempt by the Ice Hellions to barge their way into the Inner Sphere, the Ice Hellions found themselves on the receiving end of a trial of absorption by the Goliath Scorpions. During these events, Rude piloted a Kit Fox and proved himself quite the survivor as Khans were dying off like salmon after spawning. Con Rude climbed to the top of the pile, and with a salvaged and repaired linebacker, he was instrumental in forging the Scorpion Empire. Though normally a fan of lighter and faster mechs, Con Rude appreciated the speed of the linebacker, which could keep pace with his now lost Kit Fox. He typically ran it in the prime configuration, and in one of the few times when such things were recorded, the emotional support ER small laser was key to a victory during the trial of absorption, when Rude was caught up in a fight with Saucon Kilton Myers' elemental point. After taking out 4 of the elementals, Saucon Myers was left in the open, and Con Rude was able to get a beat on him. He fired the small laser in an attempt to force Myers to concede the fight, but when he didn't, a flight of streak SRMs finished off the Scorpion's Saucon. I have contacted Khan Montos repeatedly, suggesting we change our course of action. She denies our losses, and I believe the next time we meet, I will challenge her in a trial of refusal. The Ice Hellion needs to withdraw, and we need to survive. I am not sure the Khan's persistence to hold to her plan will give us that chance. I may die, but I would die for the clan's chance to live. To fail and do nothing will doom us in surety. Clan Ice Hellion Saucon Connor Rude. Personal Notations. Wars of Reaving. In 3062, the Linebacker received its obligatory heavy lasers with the H configuration. However, there's more than meets the eye with this one, so it's worth checking out. Two notable changes in the hardware were the 15th double heatsink added and 6 jump jets split between the side torsos, which shifted the movement profile to 696. Both of these changes were in service to the 2 large heavy lasers split between the arms. Though the 16 damage lasers could theoretically hit for 16 damage up to 15 hexes, the +1 to hit penalty made such long-range shots impractical. Ideally, the H's Mechwarrior wanted to be in short range, so each shot could count. The 15th double heatsink did help slightly with the heat generation, but at 18 heat generated per shot, the large heavy lasers have a punishing cost. It doesn't help that the rest of the configuration consisted of additional energy weapons in the form of 2 ER medium lasers split between the side torsos and an ER small laser in the center torso. Alpha strikes were not recommended, as going down that road left the H at 20 heat into the red. Sure, there's no ammunition to cook off, but that linebacker is not going to be doing much the next turn. While potentially a game changer, the linebacker H had to be handled carefully. For those who are bold and willing to toss all the chips onto the table for glory, go for it. In 3068, the linebacker F was first spotted in a configuration that was reminiscent of the D configuration, but without the fun and whimsy. The right torso ERPPC was the primary damage dealer and would likely stay that way even in close range when the 4 short-range Missile 6 racks split between the arms and side torsos could be brought to bear on the target. They fed from 3 tons of side torso ammunition, which is great, I guess. Finally, an improved one-shot NARC launcher was set into the left torso. While there's nothing explicitly wrong with the F configuration, it's just so clearly not as effective as the old-school D. So I'll have to boil it down to the old defensive. You make do with the pods you have on hand and make things work, until proven otherwise. Now, before we head off down the timeline, we do need to cover another lesser-known, yet still interesting linebacker Mechwarrior. Born in 3048, just before Operation Revival, Quinn seemed an unlikely candidate for a notable career. She was prone to sickness within her clan wolf Sibco, and her codex reflected a lack of initiative beyond doing the bare minimum to avoid being washed out into a lower caste. During her trial of position, Quinn surprised everyone in her linebacker by adopting a hyper-aggressive strategy that brought her into physical combat with an opponent in a Mad Dog. I'm going to pull the direct quote from Masters and Minions here because if I don't, I'm going to get angry comments about how linebackers don't have hand actuators. Don't yell at me, talk to CGL about it. Quote, moving her linebacker in close, she shattered the knee of her opponent's vulture with a kick, then ripped the arm off of it and proceeded to beat her next opponent's Madcat into submission. Unquote. Though Quinn's fondness for close-range conflict resolution strategies earned her few fans over her early career, she was eventually sponsored for a trial of birthright and claimed the much-coveted Kerensky blood name. However, it did cost her an eye during an unaugmented fight with an elemental during one of those matches. Even though Quinn Kinsky had earned her blood name and proved herself, her brash behavior ended up leading to a mockery of a defense when Clan Jade Falcon decided to challenge the wolves for her in a trial of possession. As could be expected, finding out that your clan didn't really want you left Quinn Kinsky slightly peeved at Clan Wolf. Thankfully, that helped her fit right in with the Jade Falcons, who made hating Clan Wolf a staple of their existence. Fit in like peas and carrots, one could say. Continuing to rely upon tactics that were considered dishonorable by other clanners but effective at actually winning helped Quinn as she progressed through her career. Though the first Jade Falcon years were spent in inter-clan fights, eventually she would be directed against the Word of Blake on Coventry, much to their displeasure. Though she primarily stuck to piloting a summoner and then later a flamberge, we can appreciate that it all started with somehow being able to rip off a Mad Dog's arm with a linebacker. Now, the last set of official configurations for the linebacker show up well into the 32nd century. By this point, the original plan to replace the Timberwolf with the linebacker was largely abandoned, as other machines took precedence and attention. The Wolves in Exile continued to produce it on Ark Royal until they lost control of the planet. The Linebacker G configuration carried a pair of large improved heavy lasers along with 4 additional double heat sinks to make firing them relatively consistently an option. The only other weapons in the build were a pair of improved one-shot Streak SRM-2s which were set into the right torso. The key to making the G config work was the addition of the center torso supercharger, which allowed the linebacker to crash through the offensive line and get into the backfield with a 6-12-0 movement profile. That line was explicitly added to please my elder son, who was very into football and was confused as to why I was suddenly making a video about linebackers. The last addition to the mech was a targeting computer in the left torso to improve the accuracy of those heavy lasers. The combination of improved speed, 4 additional double heat sinks, targeting computer, and the improved version of the heavy lasers made the G configuration a nasty close and mid-range hunter. You don't have to get hit by 16 damaged lasers very many times before you start questioning if getting out of bed that morning was a good idea. In 3142, the linebacker I put the I in war crime with the absolutely nasty use of machine guns in arrays. Though the primary weapon on the machine is technically the ER large pulse laser in the right torso, the 20 machine guns scattered across the arms and side torsos make a strong argument for never being too close to this linebacker when it's angry. The MGs in the arms were arranged into arrays of 3, and the torsos were in arrays of 4. If you need the refresher, I'm not going to go into great detail, but will remind us all that they allow the weapons to be fired as one, using the cluster weapons table, and each of the resulting hits target a single location. So your 4 left torso machine guns would do 8 damage to a single place on the target, presuming they all hit. The last addition to the I config was an active probe in the left torso, which offered some insight into how this linebacker was intended to be used. With the more accurate ER pulse laser, improved speed, and now the active probe, the I configuration was a swift and strong hunter of small and fast prey. While each individual machine gun did its paltry damage, all of them together with the pulse laser could tear up smaller targets quickly. Don't dismiss the linebacker I at a glance. It's more dangerous than it looks and isn't just a gimmick build. The most recent official configuration on the timeline was the config T, and for some reason it's one of my favorites. I can't quite put my thumb on why, but let's check it out. Though there is a Streak LRM-5 installed into the left torso, the T config was clearly designed to be a close-range menace. Twin plasma cannons split between the arms fed from their own dedicated 2 tons of ammunition apiece and could either be used to render infantry and battle armor into carbonized doorstops or rapidly drive up the temperature of heat-sinked targets. A Streak SRM-4 provided some explosive punch, and the right torso rear-facing flamer could add a little bit more spice to a situation as the T configuration fled the conflagration. Much like with the I configuration, the center torso active probe made it easier to hunt down scouts and other fast-moving targets running electronic countermeasures. While definitely not a high DPS build, the T configuration is a niche killer when the time is right. I still like it, because forcing an opponent with a hyper min-maxed energy weapon build to roll 4d6 additional heat would be hilarious. The missiles raked the center torso and cockpit of the Wolf mech, almost crushing the cockpit under the assault. The linebacker pilot decided to take the risk of firing, seeing Eadeh planning yet another barrage. He triggered both his long and short-range missiles in a combined strike that mangled much of the legs of Eadeh's Kingfisher, leaving long, black, comet-shaped scars on the unpainted replacement armor plates. He was still holding back his heavy-hitting PPC, knowing that the heat from the weapon would be too much to bear. Roar of Honor by Blaine Lee Pardoe. Before heading back to the locker room to enjoy the post-game show, I did want to take a crack at creating my very own unofficial and very non-canon linebacker configuration. With your indulgence, I present you the Linebacker MF. Built to be an all-ranges annoyance, the configuration is built around speed and flexibility. The right arm large pulse laser will be doing the bulk of the work, but it is quickly followed up by the left torso Advanced Tactical Missile 6 launcher in the left torso. The ATM-6 feeds from 3 tons of Case 2 protected ammunition, also in that left side. In the right torso, a laser anti-missile system takes advantage of the 14 double heat sinks, and a center torso supercharger pushes that movement profile to 612 in short bursts. The last addition to the MF config was a pair of flamers set into the left arm to help deal with any bothersome infantry or clear away any combustible material. Heat generation isn't an issue, and damage output is modest except for close range where the high explosive ATM rounds start to stack some numbers. In an ideal world, the Linebacker MF would run in, do a bunch of damage to something smaller than it, and get out just as fast. With the help of the laser anti-missile system, this Linebacker is a survivor. If you're keen on giving it a go, I've included the record sheet and the Alpha Strike card in the video notes below. Enjoy it, and let me know how it does on the tabletop. So why do we love the Linebacker? From my perspective, I like the mechs that don't get all the limelight. Sure, I love my Ebon Jaguar, and the Hellbringer has its charm, but there is an appeal to a tough 65-tonner that can outlast many of its foes. As we move deeper into the IlClan era, the Linebacker persists. Though Clan Wolf production ceased and those Linebackers lost during the Word of Blake kerfuffle were not replaced, production among the Wolves in Exile continued, and eventually Khan Alaric Ward saw the need to start the production line under the banner of the Wolf Empire. Star Colonel Maurice Raddick was given a good number of these new linebackers to rebuild his cluster in Gamma Regiment of the 103rd Wolf Guard, which was put to work in May of 3149 on Alina. The Republic of the Sphere Defenders were just the most recent warriors to discover that the linebacker was tough to take down. I'm curious what you think about the linebacker. Is it an Omni that you frequently add to your lists, or did you forget about it until you saw today's video thumbnail? Is there a configuration that you think is the best? Let me know in the comments and we'll keep the discussion going. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you think the video deserves it and you want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, and even leave a comment. All of these things make the YouTube algorithm happy. If you want to go one step further, direct support through a Ko-fi or a YouTube channel membership is a great way to help ensure that the nonsense keeps flowing. I can't do this without you, and I really appreciate it. If you'd like to join the nonsense on the Mechfrog Discord channel, we'd love to see you. I've included a link to the server in the video notes. It's the best way to find out what's coming up next week, talk to BattleTech fans, share your awesome mech paint jobs, and otherwise hang out with some pretty amazing people. With that, I'll say have a great week, take care, please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.